So my mom and dad met at Chandler High School. Here, they're natives, and they were high school sweethearts, and pretty much lived here in Chandler their whole life. My dad owned an insurance agency. My mom worked for him some. Built a great relationship over many years, and just adored each other. As they got older, they definitely were independent. We definitely saw that they were probably not as receptive to having any of their kids giving them any advice on anything. Hi, my name's Donna, and I'm here to tell you about the story of caring for my elderly parents. The process was about 2 years in regard to starting being very intentional with them in caring and finding ways to ending up in an assisted living kind of facility. Me being the youngest out of 4 kids, we all live here in town, Gilbert, Chandler area. Really feel like starting off in caring for them well was a benefit in having all of us here in town. So that just allowed us to make decisions, hard decisions, and be there together to support and come together unified when we had to discuss things with my parents, the way things, kind of played out. We didn't really know anything. Life was good. My parents lived in a nice home. They were in a gated community in southern part of Chandler. We're driving. My dad was outside. He loved, planting flowers, roses, was doing all the normal things. Then all of a sudden, my brother gets a call from my mom saying, I had to call 911. Your dad was in a diabetic coma. And that would happen a lot. The paramedics would show up. They would get his levels where they needed to be, and then life would go on. We were thankful that my brother was there, and I know that they felt like they could call him, but it was at that moment where we knew that my parents weren't telling us everything. It was very evident that they wanted their independence. They were okay. They didn't want to tell us things that were happening. I really truly believe it was because they wanted to protect us and not have us worry about them. But as being adult children and then watching your parents suffer, seeing their health deteriorating, and then also seeing that we're not getting the whole story, it was kind of hard to kind of figure out how to do that. And so that was kind of the start of what we felt like was the beginning of a journey that we knew was going to be a hard one. So that we kind of stayed on that path, and then all of a sudden things changed. My mom got one day was not able to breathe, not able to walk, and so what happened was she was in AFib, and so pretty much for 4 months, 3 to 4 months, she was in the hospital, maybe in a rehab of some sort at that time, but basically whether in ICU or hospital, she was there for at least 3 to 4 months. So we're caring for her, making decisions for her. Now we have my dad, who is at home and able to take care of himself at the time and living in his home, but really struggling with, okay, just I want to wake up in the morning and I want to go see mom, and I have to do that. And so that was really probably the defining moment for me personally, was as I'm taking him to see my mom in ICU, making sure he has his snacks so he doesn't go into a diabetic coma. And at one point he did pass out at the hospital because he was so low and just the stress. So you're like going, oh my goodness, my mom, we're being told it may not make it. My dad isn't taking care of himself, so we have to care for his diabetes. And so with that, you're just sitting here going, how are we going to keep functioning? What are we gonna do? We have both parents. So it was, for me personally, it was emotional in regard to probably the reality of probably going to lose a parent at some point soon, but yet focused on we have to find a different way. Like, this isn't going to work. And not knowing what they wanted or knowing how hard-headed and knowing they were hiding things was really difficult. And us as children knew that we were going to have hard conversation once if my mom was going to be able to get home. It also just allowed me to really see emotionally where my dad was at specifically. And I'm really, really close to him and know him well, and he confided in me a lot. And so I think it was the writing on the wall of what was ahead. So my mom gets home and we're caring for her. She's very tired. We're having that that process of getting her home and healing was a long process. My dad was fine. We were managing his insulin and stuff too. So of course he's on his best behavior. But it was at that point, once my mom got stronger, that we did like a family meeting. So all of us siblings, it's important because we all want to be on the same page. That's number one, is in dealing with this, is that us siblings showing, being unified, showing them, hey, we care, we love you, and we want to be able to love them well. And so we sat down with them, talked about a different option of selling their home, going into an assisted living or independent living. Let's do this, and then we can get rid of, your home and your bills. A better way. Mom can't care for you, Dad. It's hard on her. But they were just kind of trying to say, yeah, we understand, we hear you, but they weren't on board. And we left there frustrated and then also just super sad. I think I felt the weight for them because I knew that they didn't want to leave their home, and of course they wouldn't. And of course they probably would agree that they needed to be in a different place, but they don't want to leave their home and not have their car and just not have their life. And so I think they always associated going to a retirement place, independent living or assisted living as like, well, you might as well put me in the grave. I mean, because that's what my dad would say. Well, I'm not dead. And it's not about that. So at that point, they allowed my brother, and they would go look at some places to kind of get them to see the reality of, look, it's not what you think it is. We're not trying to bury you. We're just trying to get you to see your options, like see what it feels like. Does it feel as bad as you think it does? And, they came back not like, oh, that's horrible. They just were still just not ready. They just weren't. They found an excuse. It's too expensive, which it is. But it was at that point where we dove into their finances a little bit. And one of the good things, my brother being the power of attorney, it was on their checking account. And we were able to sit down and kind of see financially and show them, but look, like this is what you can afford for how many years, just to give them peace of mind, trying to find ways that they would see that we're not just trying to throw them out and just to like, here, go ahead and fend for yourself. Like, we are diligently looking at this as well. And the place that they chose is close to me. Like, I can run over there in less than 5 minutes. So let's walk through this. Look at what you have. You actually would be okay. But they really did not want to hear that. That wasn't helpful to them. And so we kind of let it drop and just kind of decided, like, I hope nothing bad happens kind of attitude, which is so hard and sad to me that you're leaving, you could leave their house and hug them goodbye and then not know if we get a phone call or if something bad might happen. And so then eventually, finally, my mom called one day and said, I can't do this. I can't take care of your dad anymore. And I think it was at that point where she realized, because she wasn't able to sleep. And if you know dementia, it was getting so bad that my dad wasn't sleeping at night. So he would wander in the house. Well, if you know anything about that, it's very dangerous. It's not safe. And then on the other hand, you have, they're in their 80s. You have my 80-year-old mom not able to sleep. So she's not caring for herself. She's been sick. And so in that, she finally admitted that she couldn't do it. So we gathered the troops, and then we started, to find out ways, how can we care for my dad at home? There are so many ways that you can do that. Some of them are more expensive than others. And so we had someone originally come in just to cook, clean, help out my mom. And that lasted a little bit, but then that wasn't enough. My mom still wasn't sleeping well, was still really worried about my dad wandering. And then we hired a company to come in during the day, help out with caring for my dad. And I think that was really hard for my mom. And one thing for me is to watch that, and then I would help care for him too. It was just really hard because I knew my dad would be devastated if he knew that was happening. After using the company for several weeks, it wasn't helping. It wasn't allowing still my mom to sleep, and he would try to go find her. I mean, they were married almost 70 years. Like, he was okay enough to know that my wife's in this house, I want her. And so that was really devastating. So I remember the time when we talked about, okay, maybe we put my dad in a home, because they have homes around their neighborhood. We found one that you could take your parent or adult that had dementia or mental stuff, and they would care for them, but they were by themselves. And I think it was at that point I just sobbed because I said, there's no way that my dad's gonna go to a place like that. And I told my siblings, and I asked my husband and my daughter, can I take care of Dad? Can I have him come here? And they were saying, of course, because there was no way that I was gonna let my dad go to a home by himself and try to function and try to just be. That's just not the way I feel like I want to love my dad that way. And it wasn't that we wanted to do that, but we were just we were exhausted and trying to find any way that would be best where they can stay in their home. I mean, that really basically was one of the reasons why for my mom. And so anyway, in all of that, my mom came to, she finally agreed that given the option that we would definitely do an assisted living type thing. And so in that process, then we were like, okay, we have to sell your house. And that was a hard thing. Again, another step in the reality of they're losing their independence. And so the grief there is real. Like, I was so devastated for them because I knew the loss that they felt. But in that, we knew that was where I had to go again. What's right for them, what's safe for them, what's best care for them would be to go to an assisted living. What is hard on the other side, the other lane of the emotional piece, is how sad that is. And the grief of the reality for me, selfishly, as their daughter watching that, but then also I know how hard that would be for them. And so we moved them in on my dad's birthday, which is August 27th. It was a great time. We tried to celebrate. They had great care for him. And he was still wondering, when am I going home? And, we had to say, actually, this is your home. But look how great it is. And so that was really hard. But in that, I knew that he knew that something wasn't right. And then having to deal with, like, the questioning, are we doing it the right way? And I think as kids, and again, making decisions for your elderly parents, those are the things that come to your mind. Are we doing the right thing? Is this really the only option? Could we have done something else? And so, but I really knew in my heart that we were doing the right thing. So he was in there 2 weeks, and then he went to be with Jesus right after that. So in that, I did go to a place of maybe we shouldn't have put him there, because I watched him deteriorate. I remember him telling me, Donna, I don't feel right. I don't feel good, in his way. And so I knew that it was hard for him, but I knew, like, to have him go so fast the minute you moved them, it was really hard to think and know that you were doing the right thing. And had we waited, would he still be alive? I know that's not true. I really still believe that we did. But those are the things that come. I wasn't expecting him to pass that quickly. But then now you have your mom that's grieving her husband after almost 70 years, and yet in the same breath going, why did you move me here? So then you have the anger and the bitterness and the sadness and resentment from your mom, who is already grieving, but yet thinking, why did you just disrupt my whole life? Because now I just moved from my own home, and now my husband just passed away 2 weeks later. So really hard to kind of think through as a family, to go, no, we have to trust and know that we did the right thing. Knowing that we had already discussed this, and knowing the state of mind that my dad was in and the danger that my mom was in. So we had to just really trust and know that this was God's perfect plan in this. But man, still really difficult to think through and know that, yes, this was the right thing. So she's, we're 3 years, almost 4 years out, and I don't think she'll ever really recover from that. I mean, I think the reality of it is she just misses my dad. And so I don't think that that'll ever be easy for her to sit as she sits over there and tries to make friends. I don't think in her mind that is the best scenario. And I get it. I mean, I can't expect her to be excited. I want her to be more like living life and just meeting all these people and doing bowling and whatever they do, all the activities. I want that, and I know she does want that as well, but I can tell her heart and her spirit is just never the same. But that's the love of her life. So of course it's gonna be hard. One of the things I wish that we probably would have done a little differently to help in the process was to be more, maybe have had these discussions and actually make a decision earlier on where their mental capacity was even greater, if that makes sense. Because I think seeing the benefit of it and doing it earlier would have allowed both of them to go and make relationships, and the transition would have definitely been a little bit easier. I don't want to live in a what if, we should have, but I think those are things that, if I was gonna, like been able to talk to some of my friends that are in the same kind of season in life, that I think that those hard conversations need to be had prior to when you're in it. Because when you're in the muck and in it, it's really difficult for everyone involved to really be able to make solid decisions without emotions involved. And with regard to probably the finance piece for me, because that can add a lot of stress. Again, it's something that they were worried about. That's all my parents kept talking about. But yet knowing and that we were able to dive into that piece was really helpful in knowing that they had a power of attorney, they had everything set up, they already had bought the gravestones and all that stuff, like they had already purchased all of those things. It gave them peace. I don't think they were receiving it at the time, but it did give them peace. And it gave us peace knowing, okay, they can do this. We don't have to worry whether or not they're going to get the right care, especially when they're in the state of mind my dad was in, that we knew that we had done what we were supposed to do as children. And so I think probably the thing that I just, in my story, as I live it daily, like I think through things, I constantly am like, had we done this, I really believe and have a peace that when you're unified and you're caring and your heart is to care for your parents, that you're making the right decision. But I have to keep reminding myself that it doesn't mean that it's going to be easy, and that you're not going to shed tears, and that you're not going to miss them, or think through, had I not done something, that he would be still here. Because I don't get to control that. Only God's sovereignty and all that. He wrote the story. He wrote my dad's story. And I know that that's the scenario I have to live by every day.